Hello and welcome to Complete JavaScript course. I'm very happy to welcome you to this huge course which will take you from basic JavaScript concepts to advanced JavaScript concepts. I'll take you to this journey to learn JavaScript, which will help you to understand this language and it will help you to build JavaScript project more efficiently. This course is designed for everyone who wants to learn JavaScript from scratch and also for those who are familiar with JavaScript and want to take their knowledge to next level. You will always learn something new and also understand new concepts related to this language as you deep dive into it. You can take this course even if you are not aware about JavaScript or you don't have any experience of web development. It's good to have basic knowledge about HTML and CSS. We will divide this course into 3 modules. In first module, we will learn core concepts related to JavaScript language only, like fundamentals of JavaScript, also the minimal built-in APIs which are there in language like types, functions, object, classes, closure, and prototype. Before you start working on JavaScript framework, you should know core JavaScript concepts and how JavaScript language behaves in different environment. In second module, we will cover client-side JavaScript, where we'll cover how JavaScript works in browser. And in third module, we will learn server-side JavaScript and how JavaScript works on the server side. Once these 3 modules will be covered, then we can explore client-side JavaScript or server-side JavaScript framework like Angular, React, and Node.js. So before we start with first chapter, I just want you to know that first chapter will be more theoretical and I'll try to explain what is JavaScript, its application and history. In later videos, we will do live coding along with JavaScript concepts. If you don't know how language and its ecosystem have progressed, then you will not be able to understand certain concepts in modern JavaScript as well. So it's very important to know JavaScript basics and how JavaScript releases work before we actually start working on JavaScript language or any JavaScript framework. So let's start with first chapter, Introduction to JavaScript. In this first chapter, we will cover why JavaScript, what is JavaScript, what can we do with it, what are client-side and server-side JavaScript environments, and finally, applications of JavaScript. So let's start with first question, why JavaScript? So there are so many programming languages developed over the year. This first question which may come to your mind is why JavaScript is so popular and why it's so powerful. So the JavaScript is used on client-side programming language by 97.3 of all websites as per W3 Tech. JavaScript completes its 9th year in a row as the most commonly used programming language. And right now JavaScript is the most popular language on earth. As per 2022 Stack Overflow survey, 68.62% of developers have voted for JavaScript. And as internet keeps growing, the popularity of JavaScript also increasing because JavaScript is the main language which executes in the browser. And without JavaScript, web pages will not be interactive. So the next topic in our today's discussion is JavaScript definition. As per MDN, so this is the JavaScript definition. JavaScript is lightweighted, interpreted, or just-in-time compiled programming language with first-class function. While it is most known as scripting language for web pages, many non-browser environments also use it, such as Node.js. JavaScript is high-level prototype-based, multi-paradigm, single-threaded, dynamic language supporting object-oriented, imperative, and declarative programming styles. So MDN is a web documentation repository and learning resource for web developers. It was started by Mozilla in 2005 as a unified place for documentation about open web standards and about Mozilla projects and developers guide. I highly recommend this website and documents for reference. So in case if you want to learn any web technology or any web programming language, for example HTML or CSS, or even if you want to learn JavaScript, in that case I'll highly recommend this MDN website. Let's back to the definition. So from definition, a few important keywords are extracted and let's look into those keywords in detail. First, we saw JavaScript is a lightweight programming language. So the next question is, what is lightweight programming language? So lightweight programming languages are designed to have small memory footprint and are easy to implement, or they come with minimal syntax and feature. So the obvious question will come to your mind: if it's lightweight programming language with minimal feature or footprint, then how come it's more powerful and popular? So JavaScript, it's definitely more powerful, but at the same time we are saying it has minimal syntax and feature. So to clear this confusion, first let's understand how JavaScript gets executed. In short, JavaScript program run inside JavaScript runtime. For example, Chrome browser has V8 JavaScript run engine which execute JavaScript code in Chrome browser. We will look into JavaScript runtime and how JavaScript gets compiled into the browser in more detail in upcoming video. So that topic need more time. So in today's introduction video, you can just assume JavaScript language gets executed in JavaScript runtime. That JavaScript runtime can be embedded in on the server side or client side, which is browser. So now why JavaScript is called lightweight programming language? So because JavaScript comes with minimal APIs, or it has minimal functions. Those function works with string, boolean, arrays, dates, or regular expression, but does not include any input, output, or any sophisticated features like storage or database communication or networking. It is the responsibility of host environment within which JavaScript is embedded. So various JavaScript environments like browser JavaScript engine or server-side JavaScript engine, which is Node.js, it adds API or global method into global scope of your JavaScript program that gives you environment specific capabilities. For example, you might have seen alert box on web page. So that alert box, it's not defined in JavaScript. That alert box is defined inside JavaScript runtime, which is V8 in case of Chrome. So this alert function is an API which is provided by the runtime that gives you an extra superpower to use it in your JavaScript code. JavaScript comes with minimal feature, but it's responsibility of that runtime where JavaScript gets executed. That runtime will provide you the extra rich feature. So that's why JavaScript is a lightweight programming language. The next keyword which we saw in the definition is JavaScript is interpreted or just-in-time compiled language. So before we look into whether JavaScript is compiled or interpreted language, let's quickly check what are compiled and interpreted languages are. Basically, instructions or series of instructions should be provided to machine or computer to perform any operation. Machine understands only zeros and one, so any program which we write in human readable language, for example English, should get converted into machine code. That particular machine code will be executed by that particular program, or we can say by that machine. So compiler is a computer program that reads program written in high level language such as Java and C# and translate it into the same program in low level language including machine language. So generally before any program or any code to the server, when developer writes code on their local machine and when they compile that code, final exe or DLL will get compiled and that executable file will be shipped to server, and this executable will get execute on the server. So that is the role of compiler. Then next is what is interpreter. So interpreter is a program that execute programming code directly instead of just translating it to another format. So program gets executed line by line. So in case of JavaScript, web browser receives the JavaScript code in its original text form and run that script from that. So from technical standpoint, JavaScript is an interpreted language. So most modern JavaScript program, they use this technique called just-in-time compilation to improve the performance. So this was introduced in V8 Chrome runtime in 2008 to improve the website performance. So JavaScript source code gets compiled into faster and binary format while the script is being used so that it can be run as quickly as possible. However, JavaScript is still considered as an interpreted language since the compilation handled at the runtime rather than ahead of time. So it's debatable point whether JavaScript is compiled or interpreted language. We will come to this point again when we'll discuss hoisting in JavaScript. For now, you can assume it's an interpreted language with JIT compilation feature. This particular compilation and how JavaScript gets compiled into the browser, we'll discuss all these concepts in detail in client-side programming. JavaScript has first-class function. So what are the first-class functions? Any programming language which has ability to treat function as value and to pass them as argument and to return function from another function, then it is said that programming language has first-class functions, and the functions are called first-class citizens in that programming language. For example, you can define one function and one variable can be assigned to that function. So that variable will hold that function. Now, if you define another function, you can pass this function as an input parameter to that function, and you can execute that function later on when it's needed. Also, you can return function from the function. So it's a little bit complicated, but for now you can just assume in JavaScript, you can assign function to a variable. You can pass that variable as an input parameter. And if you define another function, you can return function from that function. That's why functions are called first class citizens in JavaScript programming. The next key feature is JavaScript is a high level programming language. What are high level programming languages? High level programming languages are designed to be used by the developers, or we can say programmers. They are also referred as closer to humans. In other words, their programming style and context is easier to learn rather than low level language or machine language. So high level language has higher level of abstraction from the computer and focuses more on programming language rather than underlying hardware component such as memory management. Script is high level programming language, so you don't have to write any low level program using the JavaScript. You can use the English language to write this program. Then it's job of JavaScript runtime, which executes in browser, to convert that code into the machine code which will gets executed in browser. That's why if you see the hierarchy, under the hood, first we get the hardware, on top of that we get machine language, then assembly language and high level language. So that's why we need compiler or interpreter in between hardware or machine language and high level languages, so that this high level language code gets compiled into the machine language code. JavaScript uses prototype. So what are the prototypes? So JavaScript is little bit confusing for experienced developer from class-based languages like C# or Java, as it's dynamic and does not have any static type. So basically, you can define one variable which will hold the number, and later on you can assign string to that variable, so that on runtime only that particular data type will get changed from number to string. Prototype property is basically an object where you can attach method and properties to prototype object, which enable all other objects to inherit these methods and properties. Don't worry if you don't understand prototype for now. You can just remember that prototype is something in JavaScript which is used for inheritance, and you can create the linkage between the objects using prototype. So in prototype and chain video, we will understand how inheritance works in JavaScript and how object and property can be linked to each other. Next JavaScript language feature is multi-paradigm language. So the term paradigm in programming language refers to an approach to structure your code, or how programmers approach problems and solution, and how they structure or design their solution. So there is no perfect, or there is no right or wrong while designing or you're structuring the code. It just different paradigm are used by the programmers to solve the particular problem. For example, object-oriented style organize your code into the single unit called classes. We write classes, and inside class you'll have properties and functions. so that properties and functions are wrapped into the units called classes. So that is object oriented programming. Next is functional programming, where functional programming style organizes your code into functions. And then there are again different paradigm like procedural, and some programming languages like uses only single paradigm. For example, C uses procedural. C sharp or Java are mostly entirely class oriented only. But using JavaScript, you can write procedural, functional programming, and class oriented programs. Developer will have that freedom to choose any paradigm which is suitable for that particular solution. Next is JavaScript is dynamic language. As we discussed, JavaScript is not statically typed language, but the TypeScript is, which is superset of JavaScript. You can define one variable and later on you can change the data type of that variable. And on runtime only, JavaScript will understand, it will try to store that value if it's to that particular variable. So this dynamic nature of language will deep dive into it when we'll learn the types in JavaScript. Biggest advantage of dynamic language is incredible freedom to developer how they want to write their code. But certainly it does not provide protection against some errors. So in case if particular variable was not supposed to have the data type which may get assigned accidentally during coding, that error will come at the runtime. At the compilation time, JavaScript will not throw an error like you cannot assign number to string or you cannot assign string to number, because JavaScript is dynamic language. But when this code will execute at client side or in any host machine, there if it's not desirable to have that type, in that case that code will fail. So it comes with certain advantages and disadvantages, but developers should be careful while writing the code. These are the core features of JavaScript which we discussed. The next topic is how JavaScript works on the client side and server side as well. As we discussed, JavaScript is lightweight programming and it contains standard library of object, arrays, date, and math, and core set of language elements like operator, control structure, and statement. That means JavaScript has built-in data types, and it comes with these control structure statements. For example, this if else loop, switch case, then you can write do while. So all these control structures will be there, but it's a responsibility of host environment where JavaScript runs to provide more rich feature. So JavaScript can be used for client side development as well as on the server side development. It can be executed as a part of web browser, or it can be executed on any host machine which is on the server side. So that's why you can use the single language to develop the application which executes on the server side and the client side. So before we look into how JavaScript works in client side and server side, let's understand how basic web page works and what are client side and server side. When user visits browser and enters address in address bar, HTTP request will be sent from browser to server. Then server will read that request, and using that request, server will form the HTML response and it will send back that response to user on client. Then user will see a web page in browser. Then the next course of action can be user can submit sign up form or user can submit login form. So user will fill the form details and hit the submit button. So the subsequent request will be sent to the server with the form details. Then server will read that form details, and again based on some logic or uh, based on certain business logic, that server will read the response and it will generate the next HTML file which will get sent to client again. So now again user will see the updated page. So this is how client and server works. So there is another concept which is single page application that we can look into some other videos while learning the client side frameworks. Now, where JavaScript comes into the picture. When server sends HTML file to browser, that HTML is responsible for the content of the page. So the text, images, and the buttons and all other controls or all other HTML element that you see on the web page are always written in HTML. Those are responsible for the content of the page, and the CSS is responsible for presentation of that content. So your HTML file will have styles written in CSS, or you can write styles in different file, and that reference of that file can be given to this HTML file. So HTML is a markup language that we use to structure and give meaning to our web content, to define paragraphs, heading, tables, images, or video on the page. And CSS is the language of style rules that we use to apply styling to our HTML content. For example, setting background color, font, giving some styles to your table, to apply some styles to your images so that those will look good on all viewports, for example on mobile, tablet, and desktop. This is the role of HTML and CSS. So without JavaScript, all web pages were static before the invention of JavaScript. So it's like you are reading newspaper. JavaScript is a scripting language that updates your page dynamically. So JS was developed to make web pages more dynamic. When web page loads in browser, you can make API call to get data and show that data in browser. Also based on certain user actions like mouse click and button click, you can dynamically update the web page. We will look into these events and code in more detail in the second module of this course, which is client-side JavaScript, where we'll learn what is DOM, how JavaScript exactly works in browser, how it responds to user events. Just to summarize, on client side, you have HTML for the representation of the content, you have CSS to style the HTML content, and JavaScript is a scripting language which gets embedded into the page with which you can dynamically update the pages. The next is server side. So JavaScript can be used on the server side. JavaScript engine were originally used in browser only. On server, you might need to communicate to the database, or you need to access the local file system. So all this rich feature will be provided by the host machine where JavaScript engine runs. So that is server. So now this is the responsibility of Node.js. So the now Node is available on Windows, Linux, and Mac, so that you can use any of this operating system to host your Node.js server. So we will look into the server side JavaScript in more detail in third modules of this course, which is server side JavaScript. Let's conclude the JavaScript host environments, which are server side and the client side. The client side JavaScript executes JavaScript in the browser, whereas server side code gets executed on the server. So JavaScript was invented to make web pages more dynamic, whether on the server side, JavaScript V8 engine was extended to create Node.js so that JavaScript can be run on the server side. JavaScript can manipulate HTML and CSS code on client side, which is browser, and it can send HTTP requests to the server as well, where Node.js can be executed on any operating system, and it is used to build backend system using Node.js. And the third is, on client side, JavaScript can interact with the web page. It can take certain action based on the mouse click or button click, but it can't interact with operating system. But Node.js can access local file system. It can interact with network, or it can communicate with the database system, but it cannot manipulate your HTML and CSS code. So now let's discuss applications of JavaScript. So the first application is website development. So by using JavaScript frameworks like Angular, React, and Vue.js, now you can develop front-end heavy applications as well. So initially JavaScript was developed in 1995 to make web pages more interactive. But nowadays you can develop single page applications as well using this client side framework. The next app uses server side application. So as we discussed using Node.js, now you can use JavaScript on server side as well. So JavaScript made its way from client to server, and Node.js is most powerful framework on server side. So you can create servers as well using the same language which you have used on the client side. Third use of JavaScript is mobile web applications. So you can develop mobile applications as well using JavaScript frameworks like React Native or Mobile Angular UI or Ember.js. So the fourth use of JavaScript is to create native desktop application. So JavaScript can be used to create native desktop applications like Visual Studio Code, which is created using Electron. So Electron is again JavaScript framework, which is very useful to create this native desktop applications. The fifth use of JavaScript is for the machine learning. You can develop the machine learning models using JavaScript, using popular JavaScript library TensorFlow.js. Then you can use this ML directly into the browser or in Node.js. And one more usage of JavaScript is to create games. HTML5 comes with powerful APIs like Canvas. So you can utilize those APIs as well as JavaScript frameworks to create rich client-side games with more features. And the last usage of JavaScript is in smartwatches, where different JavaScript libraries can be used for the devices and applications. Also, there is one popular JavaScript library, p5.js, which is very useful for the creative coding. You can use this library if you want to create you want to create any complex or any creative design using HTML5 and JavaScript. In this video, we have covered what is JavaScript and its usage. So by the time you must have understood, by learning JavaScript only, you can develop not only web apps, but server-side applications, mobile applications, and desktop applications as well, and much more. This was introduction video for JavaScript. In next video, we will cover history of JavaScript language, ECMAScript, and ECMAScript versions. If you like this video, drop a like, leave a comment, and do not forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you.